Dan Campbell
Yes,
spoke.
sir.
He had some comments about one Aiden Hutchinson, which I found interesting. I heard what the heavyweights had to say last night. I thought they did a great job, and you guys on Wake Up Woodward as well. But for those of you who didn't get a chance to hear, go ahead, Spenny, play Dan Campbell's comments on Aiden Hutchinson.
To you, the impact of a defense, and can Hutchinson has another level or two, I would think, to rise to?
Yeah, sacks aren't that big of a deal as long as you're getting the pressures. As long as you're getting pressures that and those pressures show up that affect the quarterback negatively, you know. Now, would you rather have sacks? Absolutely, I'd rather have sacks, right? You lost yardage, all those things, but the pressures are more to me than, man, a pressure that affects the quarterback. We watched a couple of clips this morning in front of the team. Quarterback's wanting to step up. He can't step up. The throw is high. He's flipping to his right. He can't get his hips around, and we throw a pick. So these things that end up in negative plays, whether it's incomplete, it's turnovers, it's whatever, I'll take those all day long. So, look, Hutch is going to continue to improve, and whether those come in sacks or not, I already know he's going to be better. You know what I mean? That's just the way he is, the way he works. It's like Saint. I mean, you're gonna be able to count on the production he's going to bring.
Do you buy that he needs somebody or more production on the other side of the line to improve?
That will always help. I mean, it helps. If you've got somebody else that can kind of push them to you, at times you can kind of hide in a little window, and it could be a half a yard the other way and that's all it takes for him to miss by an arm length. So that helps. Yeah, it certainly does. But you can also get that from a 3 technique on the other side. That could be Mac, that's opposite of him on some things. So, but yeah, somebody on the other side always is going to help.
I think that perfectly sort of encapsulates what I've tried to say for a very, very long time. I've had lengthy arguments about.
Yeah.
Because what do you mean? And of course, now that Dan Campbell says it, everything Dan Campbell says is gospel, right? That's how you guys acted when he talked about J-Mo. Everything he says is gospel. It's Dan Campbell, right? He said it. But no, seriously, one thing that I've always tried to preach ad nauseum, and I think a lot of people knew that, but when it came to Hutch and sometimes frustrations, and rightfully so with the defense as a whole, is that playing the edge rushing position is so much more than just sacks.
It is.
You know how I know that? Because sacks in the grand scheme of NFL football are so fucking rare. You know how I know? The all-time leader in sacks per games has .93, and that's TJ Watt. If you have 2 sacks a game, which a lot of people call for on certain games, you are the greatest defensive player in the history of American team sports. Whether it's a 12-game season, a 14-game season, a 16-game season, or a 17-game season, if you get 2 sacks a game, you break the all-time sack record. So you might only make that one really big splash sack play on a game. And that's kind of what I've always tried to say, is that getting pressures is important. Hitting the quarterback is important. When it comes to Aiden Hutchinson, let's just look at last year. Yeah. Nobody would say that he played a bad game at Kansas City. He was in Patrick Mahomes' grill all night. He hit him 3 times, didn't sack him, but you obviously saw that Patrick Mahomes was a little bit rattled. Even the great Patrick Mahomes gets rattled. You look at the game at Minnesota to clinch the division. Hutch had 4 hits. You look at the game against the Raiders, and this is a play that me and Spenny have referenced many, many times. Devontae Adams with the Lions up by 12 early on in the 4th quarter was wide open for a walk-in 98-yard touchdown, and Jimmy Garoppolo missed him. Why did he miss him? 1, because he blows, but 2, because Aiden Hutchinson was right in his face and just lit Jimmy G up right as he threw the ball. You even look at the Rams game, the Rams playoff game, in which Aiden Hutchinson had 2 sacks, but some people even talk about, one of them, Matthew Stafford fell and Aiden touched him, and one of them, Stafford was just trying to run and Hutch kind of held contain and just kind of touched him down. Yeah. But the most impactful plays were the hits, the holding penalty that he caused, the 2nd and goal at the 6, up 7-0, the pressure and the hit that Hutch had on Stafford, in which he had to basically throw the ball away, the 3rd and 12 hit that Hutch had on Stafford, when it was 24-17, or like late in the 3rd quarter, that forced Stafford to throw the ball to Kupp for 4 yards and forced a field goal to make it 24-20. And then, of course, the most important was that holding penalty that Hutch caused with the Rams driving at the Lions 34, 3rd and 4, with a chance to get a first down, milk more clock, maybe kick the game-winning field goal, force the Lions to use timeouts, or maybe get the game-winning touchdown. That was Aiden Hutchinson that forced that holding call. I'm not saying Hutch is perfect. I'm not saying that he should have won Defensive Player of the Year last year. I'm not saying that all of his moments were great. It's just that I feel like sometimes, and I'm not accusing you, Spenmo, more the chat, just kind of watered this down to count the sacks, bruh. And you know what? While we're counting the sacks, he had 11 and a half. The way some people talk about him, you think he had like 7 or 8.
Yeah.
He had 3 in the playoffs, which was tied for the playoff lead. He had more combined regular season and postseason sacks than Myles Garrett, Micah Parsons, and Nick Bosa. He has the same amount of sacks in 3 games that TJ Watt, Micah Parsons, and Myles Garrett have in a combined 10, which is 3. Those are things that you got to realize about Hutch. He's not perfect, but he's the best defensive player we have, and we should be on our knees thanking the good Lord above that he fell to the Detroit Lions.
Nah, definitely. And Sam, you're not wrong. I just want to start with that. You're not wrong in what you are saying. And I don't expect Hutch to be a perfect player. I don't expect him to make every play. But when you have a player, the skill caliber of Hutch and how easily he gets in the backfield, like pressures are pretty much measuring how well you get in the backfield. He's in the backfield damn near every play. When you have that kind of volume, going a month without a sack, it's kind of, and I don't want to get you started. It's not about that, but the defense, for one, they have let him down to some degree. It isn't all his fault, but we have seen plays where Hutch will get in the backfield and then he whiffs on a sack, or he over pursues the quarterback and then they make a play. These are the things that we talk about when we want to see more sacks. Yes, the pressures are good. It's not a useless stat by any means, but sacks are drive and down killers. They guarantee you that the defense they're going to make a play and they're going to put the offense in a bad position. When you have just a pressure, that's fine, but the quarterback can still escape, can still make the play. And more times than not with the Lions, that's what we saw. Is that all Hutch's fault? Absolutely not. Hopefully it'll be better this year. He has more help along that D-line with Marcus Davenport, DJ Reader. Things should definitely be a lot better for Hutch, but I do need to see the sacks too.
Sure.
And I just hate like the victory lap that people are taking on this, because what Campbell said is sacks or pressures are better than nothing.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, obviously pressures are better than nothing, but Dan Campbell in that same sentence said he'd rather have sacks because they're more important.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I'd rather him get a pressure than just standing there doing nothing or not getting anywhere near the quarterback. But you'd rather have him sack the quarterback because that is more impactful and more important in the grand scheme of things.
Exactly.
Sacks are important. Sacks are what win games. Pressures, if you pressure a quarterback 4 times in a row, you don't know what's going to happen. Yeah. Maybe he gets an underthrow. Maybe he gets an interception. Mm-hmm. Maybe he gets the ball off. Maybe he makes something happen.
Maybe he scores a touchdown.
If you sack the quarterback 4 times in a row, you get the ball back. Like, it's cut and dry like that. Pressures are definitely better than nothing, but sacks are the important stat.
And at the volume that he gets in the backfield, you do just expect more sacks. I mean, that's just what it comes down to.
The problem, though, you're using an example of sacking a quarterback 4 times in a row. Nobody in the history of humankind has done that. We talk about a guy here. I'll go back to an old head. A guy that if you ask Tom Mazaway, and I don't have any disrespect for this guy, he's one of the best defensive players ever, Lawrence Taylor. He kind of uses him as the greatest defensive player ever. I'd vote Aaron Donald, but Lawrence Taylor certainly has a case. The way that Tom Mazaway, the way that old heads talk about him, you think that he had 3-4 sacks every single game. The man had 3 seasons where he had 15 or more sacks. He had 142 sacks in 183 career games. As I've said, sacks, I don't want to say they're random, but they're rare. Sometimes you do everything you can, and the quarterback just gets rid of the ball.
Yeah.
The only reason I use that 4-sack argument is because people that act like pressures are great, pressures are fine, that's all we need is pressures. Yeah. If you don't get a sack, it's fine as long as you got a pressure. No, that's not fine for me. It's not fine for me because you can still get the ball off with the pressure. You can still make a play with the pressure. Obviously, I don't expect you to sack the quarterback every time, but sacks are better than pressures, and that's not debatable.
Yeah.
No, I've never said that sacks weren't better than pressures. I've said that when you look at in the totality of last year, I think Aiden Hutchinson's sack numbers were fine. I think if all of us would have been told before the beginning of the season that he'd have 11.5 in the regular season.
That's a disappointment.
No.
We both said 14. You sat on that other booth, and you said 14.5 sacks for Aiden Hutchinson last year. So 11.5 is not fine. That's underachieving.
Oh, so he had a shitty year. He had a fucking shitty year.
Did I fucking say that?
You're basically saying that.
You just said it's fine. When, before the season started, me and you agreed 14.5 sacks is the expectation. So under that is a disappointment.
You know what? Maybe 14.5 sacks was a little bit lofty. I'm saying that he had a season, to me, that was every bit as good as a 14.5 sack season. And oh, by the way.
So you moved the bar.
I didn't move the bar. He had 3 more in the playoffs, dude. He had 3 more in the fucking playoffs. And it's the playoffs for the fucking Lions. My point is that he had 11.5 in the regular season, and then 2 on Matthew Stafford and a playoff win over him? Erect the fucking statue. That's what we would have all been saying. But no, we're acting like he needed to do more. He was less than. He is the least. One of the least of the Lions' problems.
But Sam, can you agree that he can take it up a notch? Because yes, we don't expect him to make every play, but if you're going to call him elite, that's fine. But when you got players like Myles Garrett, TJ Watt that are getting at minimum 14 sacks,
dude,
at minimum,
this is Hutch's second year. His second year. We're acting like, you know what? He wasn't prime Lawrence Taylor. He's a bum. Come on. And oh, by the way, Myles Garrett, he had a 5-game stretch where he didn't have a sack.
I get that.
He had a whole ass playoff game where he didn't have a sack.
If you are of the belief that he can take it up another notch, then what we're saying is absolutely valid.
Fine. But I don't think it was his fault at all that he didn't get more sacks. Maybe he missed a couple, and that's fine. But for the most part, he was the best thing that you had on this defense. And we should all be, and I think most of us are, and I think even you are, Spenny and KG, we should all be happy with the season that he had. He took that second-year leap. He was a Pro Bowler. Do I think he's going to be an All-Pro next year? I certainly think he has a chance. It's a pretty deep edge rusher class, but I think his sack numbers are going to improve. But I also think that has more to do with what's around him.
If he had a year like last year, would you be disappointed that he didn't progress?
No.
If he had the same type of exact year that he had last year.
Yes,
go ahead, Spinny.
I would, because he has different pieces on the defensive line now.
Exactly.
He has a guy, Italy McNeil, hopefully can stay healthy and be that guy in the middle. DJ Reader commands a double team. On the outside, if Davenport and James Houston can stay healthy, you got those pieces. So if Hutch goes out there and puts out 11.5 sacks again next year, I'll be disappointed.
With 3 of them being in the playoffs. I do understand that they do count, but in the regular season, he technically had single-digit sacks.
No.
You can't keep. No, he had 11.5.
He had 11.5 in the regular season, 3 in the playoffs. Come on.
And you can't get so defensive over Hutch when we say he needs to be better, because he's held to a higher standard.
Yeah.
We all know he was the best player on the defense last year. That doesn't mean he can't get better. That doesn't mean he's just God and you can't say anything bad about him and erect a statue of him. No, he can be better. He is a part of that trash defense. Just because he was the best player, was he not a part of the defense?
He was the best thing they had by far.
That's what I just fucking said.
Best thing by far.
But he can still get better.
Yeah.
Is he a perfect player?
No.
Can he do no wrong?
No.
Then he can take criticism and stop getting so angry when people criticize him.
No.
You can say he's the best player on the defense, but he needs to get better at the same time.
If you want to call him elite, he does need to get up there with the TJ Watts and the
and I think he will. And I don't think there's anything you can complain about from the first couple seasons, as long as he takes the leap that you all think that he will and should. But here's the thing. Spenny, let me ask you this. What's an acceptable sack total?
For him next year?
Yes.
15.
Come on, bro.
I said 14 is my floor.
Guys, did you know?
I win,
Guys,
you lose.
DJ Reader is going to be a big part of why he gets to 14 in my eyes. That man eats a double team. If we look at what he did for Trey Hendrickson, he had 17 sacks in the season.
Okay.
You don't think that's possible for Aiden with a DJ Reader if he stays healthy?
I don't want to hear a damn thing about how he's disappointing if he doesn't get 17.5 sacks. 15, I even think that's a little bit. He can get less than 15 and have a great year. Do you know how I know that? Micah Parsons never had a 15-sack season. Max Crosby has yet to have a 15-sack season. Julius Peppers never had a 15-sack season. Terrell Suggs never had a 15-sack season. Bruce Smith, the all-time leader in sacks, has 2. Jason Taylor, former Defensive Player of the Year, has 1. Von Miller has 1. 15 sacks do not grow on trees. Every single guy that I just mentioned is either a Hall of Famer or a future Hall of Famer, and a lot of them won Defensive Players of the Year.
Yeah, but it's not impossible, though.
Myles Garrett won a Defensive Player of the Year with 14 sacks. I'm just saying, if you say 15 or bust, I think that's a little bit lofty. That's all.
Is it? If he had 11.5 and 3 in the playoffs?
I mean,
he technically already did it.
Yeah, if he had 11 and a half last year and you expect him to make a jump, I don't think that's too big of a jump to expect.
but as Dan Campbell said, you can still affect the game with pressures and hits. I'm not saying they're as important.
And we're not saying that either. That's why I'm saying pressures aren't a useless stat. Yes, it can affect the quarterback, but that doesn't tell the whole story. I can pressure a quarterback and he can scramble for a 60-yard touchdown or steal pass to a receiver for a 40-yard bomb.
Yeah.
Like, pressures are important, but they're not everything. Sacks are definitely what you would prefer.
Well, before we go to break, what's your number, Flannel?
My number, I would say, if it's anything, I don't even really have a number. Get in the double digits and then make an impact in any way that you can.
See,
I would probably say 15, but I'm not going to hold him to that standard that he has to get 15 or he's a bum or anything like that.
Nobody said that.
I expect him to be fighting for an all-pro spot and to be a no-doubt Pro Bowler. That's what I expect.